You're listening to the AV-IT Amplifier. Each week, we'll feature voices and ideas that need to be amplified in the higher education and pro-AV IT communities. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. And now here's your host, Ryan Gray.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in again to the AV-IT Amplifier. It is Wednesday. You know we were here for you, and I am your host, Ryan Gray. We are back for week 2 with, I think, someone that we might all agree has the coolest name in the AV industry. Mr. Underwood, would you please remind everybody, back for week 2, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, thanks again for having me on the show. I greatly appreciate it. My name is Craig Underwood. I'm the Director of AV Engineering at Moravian University in Eastern Pennsylvania.
Thank you for coming back for week 2. And I have to start with this because to me, Underwood just sounds like the coolest cowboy name there is, right? Like the Underwood gang is known for rustling cattle and knocking over trains or doing whatever. I don't know. Tell me I'm wrong.
I honestly had no idea we were into cattle rustling and such. Although I do like to say that, oh yeah, Carrie Underwood, yeah, it's my cousin.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Maybe she is.
I think you definitely could have there could be a Western that starred Craig Underwood. So it's Craig Underwood as Craig Underwood. Anyways, I'm jealous of it is all I'm saying. Let's start there.
See, we're learning things new every day because I had no idea that I had a cool last name.
Well, I think you need to lean into it now. You know what I'm saying? It is a cool Underwood is a great don't mess with the Underwoods. You know what I'm saying? Tell me I'm just saying. I think that's
so. Important. This is to all the kids in elementary school that would call me Craig Underwear. See, I do have a cool name. So there.
True. Yeah, I could see that happening. That's true. Well, who got the last laugh now? All right. Okay, Craig, buckle up. So this has become sort of the de facto first question is, do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I think I would call myself an extroverted introvert.
Okay.
In that I generally don't have a problem presenting to a large audience or that sort of thing. Like I've been teaching for 20 years, so I get up in front of students, I talk about stuff, generally don't have a problem. But, after a while, like at the end of the night, I just all right, let me just be by myself and recharge the battery. So I do enjoy the fact that, when I am teaching, my drive home is a little over an hour. So I just have that drive on the highway for an hour that just kind of recenter and recharge the battery. And then, then I'm ready to go.
So sort of like maybe a natural introvert that has built up the ability or understands how to engage in extroverted things and take care of themselves as they do it.
Right. Because, to be totally honest, there are times like social mixers, like, Avixa social hour at Infocom. It's like, I have to do small talk with people and sound interesting. Am I going to sound interesting? I don't know. So then I get nervous. I'm like, I don't know. Like, do I really have anything that important to talk about? Does anybody care? So then I'm like, let me I'll just do my own thing, right? But so in that sense, I can be introverted, but at the same time, like, well, if I have to be extroverted, I guess I will be, and so be it. So
nice. Well, I appreciate your extroverted side because we've been able to hang out a few times and it's been awesome. And while we're on that topic, any extroverted or teaching opportunities that you will be availing yourself of at Infocom this year, as this episode will be coming out in the run-up to Infocom?
Oh, that's right. Yes. So there are 2 sessions, one of which, of course, is the pre-Infocom HETMA Education Summit on Monday and Tuesday. My particular session is on Tuesday, but of course, anyone listening, you're going to want to be there for the whole thing because it's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, my thing is on Monday, so you definitely want to be there the whole time.
Absolutely. I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't miss it for anything.
Deal. And then what else do you have going
on? Let's see. I think on Wednesday, I believe at 2:30, which you'd think I'd know exactly when my session is. But I'll also be presenting with Lyle Waldron of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, where we're going to talk about AV on a budget, which may sound vaguely familiar to you, as we have taken up the mantle of your panel discussion from last year. Now we're turning it into a 2-person presentation and collaborative session. So we hope people will join up. So yeah, it's going to be focused on campus AV systems on a budget, but integrators, you may want to show up and see what our concerns are, what we're thinking about, and how you can help us. You know what we're thinking about. So yeah, check it out.
Check those out. I would agree. I think you will learn, and I think, I have the utmost confidence that you two will elevate the panel done last year into some actual some better information. I think I've said it on the show before. I think I love moderating panels because you don't actually have to know anything to be the moderator. You just have to be able to ask questions. So, and then I'll throw out one other thing, which I don't know how this will come out, but Craig is showing an amazing amount of concentration because on the platform that we're recording on right now, my video is like 2 seconds behind my audio, which means he is engaged in this like mental. I don't know how he's dealing with this, but everybody should understand that. Talk about someone that's cool under fire. He's just rolling with it, and I appreciate that.
Well, see, that's a good excuse for me to say, well, I was just confused. I didn't really know what I was talking about or saying because I was too distracted by Ryan being out of sync, but it's okay. It's just a little mental gymnastics are helpful to, make sure I'm awake and
all right.
It's all good.
So that's what I'm saying. You never know what's going to happen on this. All right.
Exactly.
All right. So in the alternate version of the multiverse where, this an alternate set of reality where you end up working in higher ed or a technology field, where do you think you might have ended up? What do you think you might have been good at if your career had gone a whole other direction?
I mean, that's a really good question. One thing I think about is that if my life took a really crazy turn and I was just me by myself and whatever, I may have gone into audio post-production and like gone out and done something in the film industry out in like LA or something. But another part of me is like, maybe I'd be an auto mechanic because I love taking apart things and, solving problems and fixing things and such as we talked about last week. So things like that. I'm not really sure. Another part of me is like, well, maybe I would have been a band director after all because that's what I wanted to be when I was in high school when I first graduated until I found out about the whole recording industry and that there was a degree program in that. And then I changed majors to that. So that's a great question. I really have no idea.
There you go. Well, I think music teacher isn't actually a really interesting. I think you would have been a fantastic music teacher. I think Mr. Underwood would have been everyone's favorite.
Well, thanks for the vote of confidence. I like to think I do okay teaching audio, but who knows? But I can always improve.
Well, I think the things you outlined last episode would help you be a success in almost any endeavor you went into. But I think that would be a particularly cool thing. It just feels like you would have ended up somewhere where you're A, solving problems, and B, investing in other people. And that can happen in a lot of places, but it's not always a surprise that people end up in education somewhere who kind of have that need for, as you put it, pay it forward or to invest in other people because you're just, regardless of the role, presented with that opportunity on a very regular basis.
Yeah, and too, teaching is just so rewarding because you can find, you can just see, the glimmers of, of just potential in all the students and just to see hey, if I can help guide this person, and show them, this or, help them discover this about themselves. Wow, did you know you're really good at this too? You have this skill, well, let's develop that. Why don't you, check that out? And it's just really neat to help students discover more about themselves so that they can be more successful and do things that they love to do, and that's hey, cool. You're happy, and I had a little tiny part of that, and that's really cool.
That's awesome. So so you're one of those people, because we talk a lot about how, a lot of us who do this work, build and think a lot about classrooms, but rarely we teach and, use the classrooms as teachers and experience that. And it's all it's been, it's been a thing for me because I've always wanted to do it, but I can always hide behind, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time to do it. So as you approach being a teacher or being an instructor and at a different place than you work every day, what kind of teacher are you? Do you structure classes around lecture? Do you structure them around hands-on activities? Over the time you've done it, what do you see students responding to?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the students, especially today, really need to see the value of like the why. Like, why do I need to know this? And some instructors might be like, well, you need to know it because I said you need it. Like, why are you even asking that question? But to me, like, I'll take that and say, okay, well, why do you need to know this? And then, so if I reframe it from their perspective, like, well, here's why. It's like, because if I didn't know this, I wouldn't have been able to do this, and I wouldn't have gotten this job, and I would have lost out on my career. Like, people that know this can do that. Like, even if you're in this industry, this skill is helpful because it can help you be more successful in that. And I try and drive it down to differentiating yourself from the competition. When I started, in my undergrad days, I think there were 6 like audio production bachelor degrees in the country. And luckily one just happened to be 2 hours from where I grew up. But now there's audio production degrees everywhere. Everyone, you can, if you have a computer, if you have a laptop, you now have a recording studio, right? So the point of entry is so much lower, which is great. But also at the same time, if you want to get into that, you have to have the skills to be able to differentiate yourself from your competitors now. Like, well, why do you need a college degree to do this stuff? It's like, well, here's what you're going to learn in this course that maybe not everyone else will know, So I try to bring as much practical value by structuring lessons and everything else around project-based learning.
Yeah.
If they can say, all right, here's why you need to know this. Let's apply this knowledge or this skill to this problem that you're going to have to solve if you get a job in this.
Yeah.
Whether that's in live sound or studio sound, post-production, AV, whatever. There's so many skills that cross all of those different facets of the industry that, again, the more they see that value, the more they buy into it and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to learn that. And then they jump right in. They dive into it, and then, then you have them, and then you can say, okay, well, here's the other parts of this, of this skill that you need to know in order to be really successful. So
I love that, like kind of building engagement by answering the why question in terms of both, self-transparency. Well, let me tell you why it was important for me, or here's a story about that. But beyond that, I'll demonstrate it for you by engaging you in this activity that will show you why it's important. And for young people today who have access to more knowledge, information, and data than anywhere, like, I'm not surprised they kind of need to know the why do I need to know this, because somehow you have to sort out the amazing amount of knowledge that's available to figure out the really important stuff. And so by doing both a personal sharing, but then also a doing rather than telling model, it sounds like something you've iterated down into some level of success over time.
Right. Because one of my favorite things to say on like one of the first days of classes, I'll say, okay, you know what? We're going to talk about audio system design, okay? Anyone can go buy a speaker, and buy a mixer, and buy a microphone, and make sound. Like, this is not rocket science, right? But how many times have you gone by a speaker, like in a festival or wherever, and you just hear shh in the background? Do you hear noise? Do you hear distortion? Like, we're going to take you from someone that can just set up a sound system that can plug things in and get sound. Anyone can get sound, but how do you get good sound? And then how do you get great sound? So we're going to remove the guesswork of how we get to great sound, which will make you more employable.
Yeah, we're gonna
you can make more money, right?
Yeah, we're gonna teach you the science that is creating and the outcome experience that you're trying to get to. You know what I'm saying, and not make it a it's not magic, right? It's not the
Right.
feel, oh, that's such a talented sound guy. They just, the force tells them which knob to turn and how far to turn it. But there's actual data and science behind what gain structure will do for you.
Exactly. Like it's definitely an art and a science, because you definitely have to develop an ear for, okay, well, what are the EQ settings for this vocalist and live sound? You got to have really good ears and knowing those frequencies to be able to tune things up really, really, really quickly. So those are skills, of course, that you develop over time and experience. But, there's the science part of the art and science that, like, okay, there are things that you don't have to guess about. You don't have to guess what frequency that is, or, you can just do some simple math and say, if you put this many microphones this far away from these loudspeakers and the person talking is that far away, is it going to feed back or will it be stable? And how much gain can you get out of the system? So like just seeing them like, oh, wow, that's really cool. You can do that with math. And like, here's the formula, plug in the numbers. It's not too scary and, you can do this and it's great.
Nice.
And then they like that because they can say, oh, wow, that's really cool. Now I can make a sound system that I will know will not feed back, because everyone knows that a system will feed back if you turn it up too high. But why is that? And at what point does it do that? So that's really cool to see, like the light bulbs flicker on and it's like, oh, yeah, that's really cool. So
nice.
I love that.
Nice. Okay, of your 5 senses, which do you trust the most?
I mean, I would like to say my ears, but I feel like my ears have taken a beating over the years.
Yeah.
I don't know. My eyes aren't the best.
Right.
Geez, I don't know.
But for someone who's been in sound so long, you talk about, developing an ear and being able to trust your ears as an instrument of accurate measure. What has that meant? Like, I mean, the easy question is, can you actually like go to a concert or a live performance of any type and not just make yourself crazy, just listening to it for what it is instead of, thinking and talking about all the things that are going on behind the scenes and, oh, they should adjust this and that? Or can you turn that part off and just be an audience member?
I actively try to turn that part off because, like so many others, if we go to some place of enjoyment, I'll think, well, where are the loudspeakers? What's the intelligibility like? Is it sibilant or is what's going on? And I like to just see like the how, like, well, how did this venue do their sound system? And just kind of take it apart. Part of that is just that natural curiosity, but also I'm always on the lookout for learning experiences for my students. I can say, hey, this example at this place that you can go to did a sound system like this, and I noticed X, Y, and Z, and here's how we could fix it. So like, I'm always trying to find ways to make, to have practical examples for students. But so before I go off on too much of a tangent, to answer your actual question, I try to, but I find it very difficult to. To turn off that work side of my brain when I'm going to events, whether it's in the theater or even just the movie theater, or like live theater or live sound. But it depends. That's something I could probably work on.
It's hard. I'm the same way where I know I can't ignore it, so I usually try and make sure I'm there early enough pre-show to try and see the things, take the pictures, answer the question, you know what I'm saying? And just, can I get myself to a place that once it starts, I'm thinking content, not delivery, right? Message, not delivery, but it can be really difficult when something is awry or something doesn't, I feel like, oh man, if they could just tweak a little bit, or God, if they pulled that back just 5 dB, it would be so much cleaner than it is right now. Those sorts of things just make it really hard sometimes.
It is very difficult, I got to admit, So I don't, if you find the answer of how you are able to get around that, let me know. My wife would definitely appreciate it. She's like, can you just enjoy the show?
Yeah, stop talking
enjoy
to
the
me
show
about that. And
we don't need to look at the ceiling all the time or the walls, or. So
I've been looking for that answer, and I've never been able to find it, which is why I ask everybody else, because I don't know. There's nothing to do.
we will continue to try to find the answer
All right.
sometime.
Okay, philosophical. Are people generally good with a proclivity for evil, or generally evil with a proclivity for good?
I like to think that people are generally good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Do you like to think that, or do you actually think that?
I actually think that. I think people are generally good. In my experience, most people are good. They may do things they don't intend to be bad, but I think all in all, people are good. Doesn't mean there's a few outliers here and there, but
So then, how does that affect when you think about, both sort of work and personal relationships? If you're, if you're living every day with that beginning part of people are good, how does that affect how you, make decisions or move through life? Or is it just something that is kind of innate that is not on the front of your mind that much?
Well, I think being in AV and in higher ed, part of my job is basically customer service, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to take situations and defuse a frustrating situation for, say, a faculty member that's experiencing a problem in the classroom. They're angry, they're unhappy. They might project that unhappiness at me. And so I will just take that. I'm not going to take it personally. Like, hey, there's a frustrating situation that they need help with. And so how can I help them become less frustrated and, defuse the situation? So ultimately the person is good. They're good people. They're just experiencing something frustrating. So, it's not, here or there. It's just, okay, well, let's see if we can work together. And then 9 times out of 10, you solve the problem and they're happy and it's all good, right? So just trying to understand other people's point of view and their perspective before jumping to conclusions. So I don't know, maybe it's naive to think everybody's good, but I tend to be more of an optimist than a pessimist. So,
and it's fine. No, you know what I'm saying? People have proclivities one way or the other, but it's a different way people walk through the world that way. So, yeah, you definitely strike me as give people the benefit of the doubt to start. You know what I'm saying? And roll with it.
yeah, why not, right?
Yeah.
Let's assume good, and then maybe people will be good.
Cool. So I do have one specific question for you, which is, I've seen for Moravians a student recruitment event. You dressed up in some costumes in the past, and are you still going to be able to get a costume or something going for that event coming in the future?
Well, I like to think that, sometimes certain things sometimes the magic just happens. And if you try too hard to recreate it in a different situation, sometimes you're just trying too hard. But sometimes things just happen at the right time with the right people for the right reason. And enjoy the moment and be glad that it happened. But it's I don't want to say that me getting into a costume or sort of thing will never happen again. But it's less likely.
Got it. Understood.
In the current situation.
So even if you're even if you don't, you can still know that you're enough for the rest of us, right?
Yes, and it's okay. Yeah, I think, I'm going to have to find something else to play off of. So, it may not be, dressing up or something, but maybe it's just a different spin. Who knows?
You gotta have a gimmick. You got to have a gimmick if you want to get students' attention.
Exactly. So, I don't want to repeat that same gimmick because that was a magical moment in time, which must stand on its own.
I look forward to what you come up with for this year. Okay.
We shall see.
Very important question. What is the best sandwich?
The best sandwich? Oh, geez. How about a cheesesteak?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And
Or,
are you, by law, required to say that based upon where you live? Is there like a Chamber of Commerce required law that if you're that close to Philadelphia, you must answer cheesesteak?
well, I mean, a cheesesteak, from Philly is phenomenal, right? But there's also the Lehigh Valley version of the cheesesteak. So we're in the Lehigh
Ooh.
Valley, which is, like I
Right.
said, about an hour north of Philadelphia. So it's very regional. Once you cross, the outside of the 5-county region of Philadelphia, once you go north of that, which is where we're at, then they have the Lehigh Valley cheesesteak, in which they have a slightly different sauce and sometimes a little bit different cheese. And, it's a little different. So cheesesteak in Philly is like, cheese whiz and
Yeah.
the fried onions and the cheese, and the steak and all that. But up here, they put either some variation of like a steak sauce or marinara sauce sometimes, and then sometimes they'll put pickles or hot peppers or sweet peppers. It might be a Cooper cheese rather than a cheese whiz. So there's all kinds of regional variations here. So, cheesesteak, I mean, this could go off the rails here. So I will just simply say it, to avoid starting something,
Okay.
cheesesteak is great. But also, on X, you see a lot of tweets or X's, I don't know, whatever the terminology is these days about that, about Wawa, right? So
Yes.
I am in the heart of Wawa country. So pretty much any sandwich from Wawa is phenomenal.
It's a
So,
good sandwich. Okay.
and if you have not experienced Wawa, I am sorry, then you will have to come visit and we will experience it together.
Well, I think that's a requirement. I went to Wawa one time in Miami, and apparently I did it all wrong because I didn't order off the thing. I got I wasn't sure. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know. All right, I didn't know.
That's okay. You're forgiven. You're forgiven. It's okay.
And the people are like, "You did what? You got a pre-made thing off the rack? What are you? A Neanderthal farmer? You know what I'm
Wait,
saying?
you got it off the rack and you didn't order it on the touchscreen?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was a touchscreen
Okay.
when I went in there.
Oh, I thought you just ordered one of the pre-made versions of the sandwich. But
Oh,
no,
I
you
didn't
just
even
got
get
it.
that far. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
You see your
Well-
reaction? I did it all wrong. This is something I have to remedy at some point now.
Well, see, now you definitely have to come visit us over here in the East Coast. And yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't give you too much, heat about it, but it's sad that you were not able to experience the full Wawa.
That's what I'm saying. I understand, and I take responsibility. I was not prepared. You know what I'm saying? The motto:
okay.
"Be prepared." I should have known and been prepared, and I wasn't. So I will take accountability for that. Okay, same last three questions for everybody. Third to last question: what is a question you wish you would be asked, but nobody ever asks you?
Oh, gosh. I feel like people ask me so many different questions. I can't think of a question people haven't asked me about.
All right. So then you would just kind of wish people stopped asking you stuff.
Well,
Just could you remember what I said last time and stop asking me the same question over and over and over again?
well, I think it would be nice if I don't really care what people ask me about. It's more what they ask me for. It's ask me about anything. And, so during the day, it's like, oh, I need this, I need that. And that's part of my job, and that's fine. So it's nice to not be asked for things. It's just nice to be asked about things. So that's not an answer to your question.
No, it is an answer.
But
Yeah. So
dance
eventually,
around the question.
a little bit. It's like, instead of just asking me for something, ask me about something.
I mean, I will happily do something for anybody if it's within my capabilities and, because I like helping people, right? But so I don't mean to turn that into a negative, like, don't ask me for anything. It sounds kind of grumpy and,
Yeah.
I don't like being grumpy. And that's
No, you don't come across as a very grumpy individual.
well, just wait, hang around me a little more often. You'll see.
All right. But then we'll just go to Wawa and then
Yes.
just
And
turn
then
it all
things will
around.
be ungrumpy. It will
Exactly.
be ungrumpified.
All right.
Wawa ungrumpifies people.
Cool. So if someone did think, I think that person could help me with something and they wanted to get in contact with you, how would they do it?
Probably the best way is to find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Craig Underwood, CTS. I think that's in my title in there. So if there's multiple Craig Underwoods with the best name in the world, then, you'll know which one of me is out
Just
there.
Craig of the Lehigh Valley Underwoods.
Yes, because there are a couple other Craigs that I tend to get their emails on my personal email sometimes.
Nice.
Which is interesting. But there's one in Australia, and then there's an actor in Indiana named Craig Underwood. And I get calls all the time like, hey, come audition for our production. I'm like, that
You
sounds
should
like a
do
lot of
that.
fun, but it's not
You
me.
should go book a gig. You know what I'm saying?
If it was anywhere close, I would probably do that.
Do
But,
it. Yeah,
I don't want to sabotage the other Craig Underwoods out there. So
that's true. The Brotherhood of
because
Underwoods.
people are naturally good. So
Yeah, there you go. You're not an agent of chaos. You don't want to create that level of chaos for somebody else.
Not quite yet. I'm not there yet. So.
Okay. All right. Finally, the last question is the old classic newscasters always had a phrase that they would end their newscast with, right? Good night and good luck. It was the one that comes to mind. And the close of Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update, all the different hosts have had their own little catchphrases at the end. So what is Craig Underwood's drop the mic sign-off phrase?
Well, I wouldn't call it a drop the mic sign off. So, but I'll just go with what I typically say to people, and I'll say, hey, have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the AV IT Amplifier. Join us again for next week's episode when we'll welcome a new guest who you'll want to hear from. We promise. Your host has been Ryan Gray. He's on the tweeters at Ryan_A_Gray, or find him on LinkedIn to connect. Please subscribe and give the show a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. The views expressed here are not necessarily those of our respective institutions, employers, or sponsors. Everyone hang in there, go easy, and we'll be back next week.